This movie cost $320 million to make. And if you can see all those dollars there on screen, you are better at this than we are, because I think this looks terrible. We're talking about the electric state, and hey, we're in the same place at the same time. Yes. This is rare. It's a Pi Day miracle. Today is Pi Day.
It's true.
March 14th. Thanks for being here. Come subscribe, because you never know when we're going to be in the same room at the same time, and you don't want to miss that. So come hang out with us. Alonzo, what is Electric State about?
Oh, I don't want to review the budget of this movie, but at any price, this is a dog.
Humans and bots fighting against the real enemy.
Oh, I like the way she thinks.
So the Russo brothers are back, and this time it's set in a not exactly futuristic, it's technically the 90s, dystopia where, yes, guess what? We've created robots to help us out, and then the robots have rebelled, and then there was a war, and now we're picking up all the pieces, and everything in this movie feels so recycled and so familiar. Like, there are actual robots in this movie that are called scavs. They're scavengers. They live on stealing the component parts of other robots. And I was like, oh, the Russo brothers are writing what they know, because all they do in this movie is scavenge. It's ridiculous. So anyway, Millie Bobby Brown loses her family in a car accident before the robot wars happen. And then years later, she is convinced that this mechanized mascot of a cartoon robot who appears at her house is perhaps the spirit of her dead brother, and follows him into the wasteland where the robots have all been exiled by billionaire Stanley Tucci, and the only person who can help her out is a black marketeer played by Chris Pratt in a really terrible wig. Wackiness and the most obvious needle drops you ever heard in your life.
Oh my God. So much money spent on really obvious needle drops. And then did you also notice the cutesy little references the Russos have here to other Russo properties?
Oh, I missed that.
So there's a robot that's reading an Avengers comic, and then there is an Arrested Development joke in the middle of a big battle. Do you want me to just tell you what it is? Should we leave some surprises for you guys?
Are there any in this movie?
None. Yeah. There is a giant billboard for Barry Zuckercord.
Oh God, I missed that.
He's very good. He isn't. And neither is this movie. It is so noisy, and for all that money on the budget, it looks terrible.
Yeah.
And there's never any kind of like fluidity between the human beings and all of these robots. The biggest miscalculation, and maybe this is in the book that it's based on, but the biggest miscalculation to me is that the robot that's supposed to be Millie Bobby Brown's little brother is this like giant yellow smiley faced head with these like psychotic eyes and this giant smile. So at these moments that are supposed to be poignant, like it's so distracting because he just looks crazed.
He has a rictus basically, and he only speaks in pre-recorded.
Oh, right.
Phrases.
Right.
That she has to sort of interpret and figure out what it is he means in the moment.
Yeah.
Oh man, this movie. And this is, we always talk about the Red Notice movie, TM Lon Harris, and as sort of the kind of basic thing that Netflix always does and does badly, which is like, we'll throw a bunch of stars in, we'll have like this globe-trotting plot, but we'll stand people in front of green screens. There will be a ton of banter, but none of it will be funny. And there will be these action sequences that don't land, and a story that has no stakes. And I think we've now reached the new pinnacle of thing that Netflix does badly. We're going to have to start calling them Electric State. Because this apparently costs so much money, and you're like, why are Holly Hunter and Colman Domingo and
Anthony Mackie
and Giancarlo Esposito, in this movie? I mean, look, get that summer house. I'm not crunching anybody a paycheck, but like this is so beneath these people.
Yeah.
Millie Bobby Brown is supposed to be a minor in this movie, but she never she's always seems like she's 20.
Like a high school girl.
Yeah. So like
Yeah.
the idea that she's still in the foster care system, I'm like, really? Oh, and her terrible foster parent is played by Jason Alexander. Also, what are you doing?
Why are you here? Yeah. So it begins in 1990, then flashes forward to 1994, but she looks exactly the same the whole time. There's nothing to her character. She sort of speaks in these like bland platitudes about like, I've got to go save my brother. And Chris Pratt is just doing Star-Lord, like yet another like quippy scavenger, ne'er-do-well, but charming and wearing a vest. And ooh, what's that? Ooh, I got a little notification on my laptop. This is the fun of being here all together. So it is just, it's a lot. It's like a mishmash of stuff. And then the big climactic battle just looks like a messy mishmash of just like of things that are metal, hitting each other. There's this abandoned mall where all of the exiled robots live, and then you get like Brian Cox as this old-timey baseball robot, and you get Jenny Slate as this postal carrier robot. She's actually my favorite part of the whole movie.
I did like her.
She's super cute.
It was a fun performance, but I just like the whole time in the mall, I was like, oh right, this is like The Last of Us for dummies. But like almost everything that they encounter in this movie that they say or do reminded me of another movie.
Totally.
I was thinking about like what was the big sci-fi movie from a couple of years ago that was about like the robot revolution and the little
John David Washington's in it. Yes. The creator. Yes. It's a lot like that. Yes.
Remember that terrible movie that Wally Pfister directed where Johnny Depp becomes one with the internet?
Yes.
That, all these different, it just was such a mishmash of like that of deja vu, basically, right. This movie, and all done, well, maybe except for the Johnny Depp one, worse than the original one.
The robots rising up and like thinking for themselves and wanting rights. Like this is like the dawn of time.
Yeah.
The dawn of robots. They've wanted to rise up. Yes.
Exactly. So we've seen it so many times. And then again, like seriously, the needle drops in this movie are agony. They're so, it's like kids' birthday party DJ, like the most obvious hits and the most obvious thematic connections. Like whoever came up with that, I think is, I don't know.
What is the worst one for you? There's I Fought the Law.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. When the piano playing robot starts doing "I Will Survive,"
that's bad.
Yeah,
there's the whole running through line with Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, which I think is one of those like, hey, remember that song? Yeah. Remember that song that you liked? Like, we're gonna use it in a funny, ironic way. And then they do Wonderwall, which hadn't even come out yet. Like, not to be all uptight about this, but if you're trying to create a very specific place in pop culture history, like Wonderwall came out later.
There are big mouth Billy Bass jokes in this movie.
Yeah, it's all like, ooh, I know that from the 90s. Anyway, this is a mess. If you're just curious to see how terrible it could be featuring this cast with these directors,
knock yourself out.
Yeah, I mean, they did The Gray Man too, the Russos, and this sort of feels like
and Cherry.
So they had this deal with Netflix, and these movies just keep getting worse.
Netflix, which is terrible.
They just keep getting worse. These movies. So I will say like a 2. It's also very long.
Yeah, like maybe a 2.3.
Okay.
It is. It seems endless, but it is 2 hours plus, and you know exactly where it's all going, and it's got nothing to say about technology or human beings or terrible billionaires or anything that you didn't go in knowing already.
So don't watch it. Thanks.